I run a company called Glow Arts, which promotes gigs, does consultancy work from fundraising, evaluation, also working with artists to support them make their own music in a variety of different ways. What else does Glow Arts do?
Tour management?
Oh yeah, tour management as well. And I used to work at Creative Scotland and the Youth Music Initiative, so I have a lot of experience supporting young people to make a career in the music industry.
Okay, am I working or am I just loud enough?
Both.
Good, that's good. My name's Jamie Gilmore. I work for the Scottish Music Centre as their operations manager. I work across a number of different sort of youth projects with them, and when I'm not working at the Scottish Music Centre, I am an artist manager, and I work with two bands, We Were Promised Jetpacks and the Phantom Band, and we're also developing a couple other sort of younger bands on the side.
So I think that where I'd probably like to start, in fact where I will start, is with what we call collection societies, because that is a path that's going to lead you to various different types of income. And how many of you have heard of PRS? Now, how many of you are PRS members? Okay, that's quite a good amount. And of those of you who aren't PRS members, how many of you write your own songs? Right, okay, so pay attention to this because it's important. PPL, have any of you heard of PPL? Are any of you PPL members? Okay. Are any of you looking to work as session musicians or play on other people's? Okay, because this is relevant not just for the songwriters but for everyone who's recording music. It's the same as well for, there's a PPL membership for labels, and we'll come to that in a minute. Now, this is where we're going to start, and I think Jamie's going to give us a succinct description. Before we move into that, though, I'd like to say that we'll be covering gigs and releasing music in the later panels, so you'll get a bit of an idea of what you earn from that. But it's not going to be very much at the beginning, so this is why these things are important, because what you hear here is probably, or most probably, if you do it well, going to earn you a lot more money than selling some CDs at gigs, or from doing some of the smaller gigs when you're starting out. So, Jamie, my good man, can you sum up what PRS does and how it works?
Okay, so for writers of compositions, music, call it we will, let's just start with the fact that when writing a work, a full work, that work can be split often into two separate rights. The rights to the song and the rights to the lyric. Did everybody know that those are two separate rights? So if you are a lyricist, it's not the same as being necessarily a songwriter or a composer. So we use the term work quite a lot, and you'll hear me use that because it's an easy way of encapsulating both of those rights to make a single thing. So if you contribute to the creation of the works, then you can join either both organisations, PRS and MCPS. So PRS exists to collect the royalties from the exploitation of their members' works. And the way they do that is through works that are exploited through radio or public broadcast or public performance. MCPS collect on behalf of their members for the mechanical reproduction of their work. So that means if your work is made into a CD or a vinyl record or even a birthday card or a music box or anything that's a mechanical reproduction, then that's dealt with by the MCPS and collected for by the MCPS. One of the reasons I'd mentioned lyrics as being separate before is because the mechanical reproduction of the lyrics can be a songbook. It can even be the lyrics in the inside of your record is a different mechanical reproduction of that right than the song being on the actual record. So MCPS, they collect on that and they distribute that to their members. PPL is completely different and it collects for performers. So the performers who feature on the actual recording as musicians. That can be anything as sort of diverse as vocalists, guitarists, to people doing hand claps. You know, so long as you perform on the record, you can join the PPL, and PPL collect in a very similar way to PRS, but only on the recorded record. So, for example, if you played on, let's just call it record X, and then someone done a live cover of that, you won't collect anything for that, because live has nothing to do with it. It's merely to do with the phonographic exploitation. So any time that happens, they collect that, and then they distribute that to their members. They also collect on behalf of phonograph owners, like record companies.
So if you're self-releasing, the thing to keep in mind is that you need to join PPL as a performer if you're playing on your own recording or your own composition, and you have to join as a label so that when that royalty comes through, it's split between the two. A lot of people that are recording join PPL and they think it's just for them, for their own part of it, but if they're self-releasing, then make sure you do both, because that's money that's gonna come in. It's also something that, one point to make, it's not backdated very far. With PPL it's 6 years, but with PRS it's less than a year, isn't it? So
it's a year.
Right, so you know, if you get played on Jim's show over there, or you get played on hello Jim, then you're gonna get money for that, and it's registered by the radio stations how much you get, and the bigger the listenership, the bigger the payment's gonna be. Do you have an idea just off the top of your head what it would be for something like Ali McRae's show?
Remember, right, Ali McRae's not like £37 or something like that.
So for one play, £37, you maybe get £50 for doing a small gig when you're starting out, or even less if it's your first one, but we'll cover that in a bit. On a bigger scale, if some of you are already thinking about playing at Tea Break at Tea in the Park, then that's £100 for the fee, so you get £100 and I believe some warm cooking lager, and then...
So one thing that's important is that there's not a sort of one rule or one license fits all sort of fee that's going to be paid out by every radio station. It depends how those radio stations are either monitored, or it depends on how they're tracked, to who looks to see what's being played, and how frequently it's being paid. So if you're played on like let's say a community radio station, there's a chance that you might get PRS for that. There's a chance you might not. It just depends on whether PRS have picked up on that particular play. Like they'll monitor maybe like a couple of days every month, and the people who are lucky enough to be picked up from that. Something like the BBC, they monitor it all the time. So if you play the BBC, you definitely get paid. So that's done through a series of different licenses, depending on the size of the station, depending on the listenership. Whereas when it comes to performances, it's a completely separate license and a completely separate way of figuring out how much you're going to get paid. So if you play a small venue, let's say you play a place like, I don't know, Stereo maybe, in Glasgow City Centre, that might be, but I doubt it, a significant venue, but I think it's probably under the sort of gigs and clubs side of things. So if you play a place like Stereo and you tell PRS that you've played that, you'll get about £5 in PRS for doing that show. So if you play a bigger show though, let's say you play somewhere like, I don't know, the Old Fruit Market, which is a bigger venue, that's a significant venue, so the license the PRS will give that is a different license from the license they would give to a smaller venue like Stereo. The way that they figure out the money on that is they take 6% of the combined box office takings for that particular show, and that goes to PRS, and that 6% is then distributed among the writers whose works are exploited at that particular show. So if you're playing a show and you know it's quite a big show, and as Olaf said, it's a small fee, so let's just say the fee might be £100, not enough to pay your sound engineer, maybe not even enough to pay your van. You think, this is financially not going to be worthwhile. If you've got an app on your phone that works as a calculator, or God forbid, an actual calculator, then you can look at roughly how many people are going to be there, what they're going to pay, obviously figure out what the combined box office is going to be, figure out what 6% of that is, and then divide up exactly how many people are playing and how many works are roughly being exploited to give you an idea of exactly how much money you will make. So that's the difference between that.
And if you do get offered something where you're, playing on TV or something, then you can use your own song, because if you play someone else's, they'll get all the money for it. So that's the downside on a cover version. Now, there's another royalty related to PPL that's administered by PPL called VPL, and that pays out on video when videos are shown. So is that something that you've got experience with, Jamie?
I'll be honest, I don't have a lot of VPL experience because the bands that I work with are both signed to record labels, so the record label pay for the video, so they then own the video. That's the same as phonographs, by the way. If you, and again, the same thing that we were saying about PPL earlier, if you pay for your record to be created, then you own the phonograph. The person who pays for that owns it, unless you then do some sort of contract or a license to transfer that ownership to someone else. So I've not really had to do any VPL stuff purely because we've been given a budget to create a video, and the person who's paying for that video is the person who needs to collect on the VPL.
So something to keep in mind, if you go to one of the earlier panels that we did in Musselburgh, there's a guy called Scott McDonald that runs a label. They do a lot of hip-hop stuff called Knife Fighting Monkeys Records, and he's seen his actual sales really decline, album sales really decline, but where he is making more money than he does on actual sales is that he'll make a video for each of the releases, and then he can upload that to say MTV's website, and if it gets picked up, then you get paid royalties for each time the video is shown. So if any of you are making videos or have got any experience in that, it's worth keeping that in mind. And there is also, YouTube also does pay a small amount, but you really have to be getting a lot of views for that to really start coming in.
Yeah, but as well as that, you won't get any money from your YouTube stuff if you don't know how to collect it, and you can do that again on the PRS website. The PRS website, I like the PRS website. I'm one of the very few people I've ever met who does. I think it's amazing because it's like a little labyrinth. You get to run around looking for money, and I like that because that's just the way that I am. But there is a room in that labyrinth that is YouTube claims, and anything you've got on YouTube, whether you've uploaded it or somebody else has uploaded it, you just copy the URL in, stick it in a wee line, just like a kind of wee spreadsheet thing, and you press send, and that means they know that it's your work, and then they give you money for it if there's enough plays. But if you don't do that, you don't get anything, as far as I know.
So I think we've managed to do collection societies in 15 minutes to an extent. And then, we can ask us questions as well in a wee bit if there's any things that aren't clear. But I wanted to move on to something else that has become quite a big area for making money from music, and that's what's called sync. And I wonder if you, both of you got experience with that, and could you explain a little bit about what it is?
Synchronization is when you take your musical work and place it alongside a piece of moving imagery, so a film, obviously cartoon, whatever. In order for somebody else to do that, you often have to ask your permission. There are sometimes they don't. So, for example, you might see that there's a work of yours used on, again, the BBC. They can do that through a thing that's a blanket license with PRS. But for films, television, advertising, especially things that will change or could change the sort of perception or interpretation of your music, you have to have permission from the phonograph owner, record company, person who owns the recording that I mentioned earlier, or the writer and the writer, and they call that both sides. So one side is the guy who owns the phonograph, the other side is the writer. or the combined writers of the works. So there's a thing called the synchronization fee, so that the person who wants to synchronize these two works together will have to essentially appease the writer and the phonograph owner by giving them money, and that's a sync fee. And how much that money is entirely subjective. It's how long is a piece of string.
But it does vary immensely, and it also varies in terms of how it's used. But the thing to mention with that is that you'll get that fee, but presumably as well, you mentioned the PRS. So if so you'd get royalties for that. So again, that's why it's important that you're registered with that, and also with PPL, because if anywhere it's being played or public, it's always in the public side of the names of these organizations you have to keep in mind. There's something that gets paid. So you keep that in mind. Sometimes some areas will pay more than others. There's some services as well that if you're starting out and you don't want to deal with that, you want to focus more on other things like recording your music and writing good music, then there are services that will find places to place your music, or will offer your music, and they'll take a bigger cut than maybe a publishing company would. Could I just ask, does anyone not know what a publisher is? Okay, because it might be, to me it's off, when I think of a publisher, I think of someone that puts out newspapers or magazines, but in music it has an entirely different meaning.
Sure. Well, let's go and start maybe with copyright. So the owner of the copyright of a piece of work is the person who creates that piece of work for the first time in a physical format. So that could be writing it down as a score, or writing down lyrics on a piece of paper, or it could be when you record something, whether that lands on a sort of DAT tape, or do you mean some sort of like digital hard drive. It's a physical form. So as soon as that exists, you are the copyright owner. I mean, sometimes disputes happen when you need to prove that you're the copyright owner later on, but that's a completely separate matter. A publisher is a person who enters into a relationship with those copyright owners where you will assign or license your rights to that person or company so that they can exploit it, and they will usually give you an advance so that you will then do that, and they will then recoup their initial investment through the money that's made through the exploitation.
They basically do what we're talking about, so you don't have to do it yourself, and they take a cut for it. So there are some things as well that you can do which you might find surprising, but there are things like BBC Scotland, where they, even in sports shows, that they will use music for what's called a sound bit. So when you see the goals roundup from what passes for football in Scotland, that might have some music underpinning it, and you'll get a small amount of money from PRS for that, but it's worth keeping in mind. So if you find out who produces different TV shows, they're not going to be that used to getting music sent to them. And I know this because I know a couple of people that do produce these kinds of programs. So it's really there are opportunities there. Maybe they won't pay for music, especially computer games are quite reluctant to pay for it, but other organizations are. Advertising agencies often look for music as well. So it's just something worth keeping on your radar.
I mean, all of this stuff's kind of vast. I mean, again, there is no hard and fast rules for these sort of deals. I mean, it just depends on where you are as an artist. I mean, for example, when we're talking about advertisers, the first time I ever done a sync deal, or was involved in a sync deal, I should say, because a lot of people involved in it, was with the National Baseball League, and it was for an ad campaign that was shown across America, and the fee for that was tiny. You know, wasn't really anything to sort of write home about. But it was the first ad deal that we did, and if we were like, oh no, we're not doing that, this is definitely what this is worth, then I mean that would be fine, and that's all good and well. But we decided that we weren't going to do that, and that we kind of liked the exposure of it, and we liked the ad, and you know, we
What's
did
a
the
tiny deal? I mean, is that like £1,000 or something?
I'll tell you how much that deal was for, but I won't tell you any of the bigger ones, right?
Okay.
That was $500.
Okay.
So that was a $500 one. And that's both sides. So the label gets $500 and we got $500. And it really, you know, that was that. But since then, we've went on to do, I actually can't think of the number of how many sync things we've done on TV and things like that. We don't get $500 anymore, but we had to get $500 to start. And you know, that's just sometimes the way it is. I was at one of these conferences and I'd heard a guy who does he does composition for trailers, which is one of the best paid trailers and car adverts. But trailers make an awful lot of money, and he'd said, don't try and do the best deal ever. Try and do as many deals as you possibly can. And I think there was a lot of value in that, because the guy does very well now, and he does very well because people know that he does very well, and they know that he's got a back history of working in that trade. Nobody's trying to take him for a ride because he's got a reputation. Whereas maybe his first time round, maybe they will, maybe they did, but at the end of the day, he got what he wanted.
And I think this is an interesting point. I mean, how important would you say for, in terms of surviving as a musician, is sync now? I mean, in comparison to record sales?
Yeah, it makes us quite a lot of money.
So would you say that helps you that helps you survive as artists? Is an essential part of it?
I think the whole point of this panel today, this how to make money from music, is that every single coin that can come in the door is essential to help us survive as artists. We don't make loads of money. Like, neither of the artists that I look after are wealthy. You know, like we're not by a long shot, but we get by. You know, and we get by looking at all of the money that can come in. You know, there's nothing neglected.
So moving on from this then, I guess something else that is going to generate a decent amount of money is merchandise. And Jen, I think it was time that we brought you in on this conversation. This is an area with which you've got a lot of experience. I mean, for a smaller act starting out, maybe going on a tour, how important is merchandise? I mean, what kind of proportion of the income can it generate?
Well, merchandise, no matter what size act you are or what stage you're at, is really important. That folk who come and see you and enjoy what you do will want to spend more money on you. So provide them with stuff that they can buy. Me and Jamie were just having a bit of a conversation. I mainly work in, folk music, so I do, but actually, as it turns out, the proportion spend between folk music and the popular music scene is the same, and about £1 or £2 per head is what you're looking at in terms of your audiences. So, you know, the bigger shows that you've got, brilliant, but it doesn't really matter, even if you know, selling 50 quid's worth of merch will pay your petrol, your, you know, whatever. Yeah.
Are there any particular things that sell really well? I mean, how much difference do you think there is in terms of the music you play, what type of thing your audience wants to buy?
Well, the tours I do, I work with a folk singer called Kate Rusby. She's she's pretty big in that scene. I mean, she's done an album, or she's done a single with Ronan Keating. That's yeah. But she tends to play minimum 500-seater venues. Her merch goes everything from £1.50 tiny canvas bags, wee mini bags where she's got really short curly hair, so I sticked on a wee wifey with curly hair, and we can sell up to about 60 of them a night. To the other end of what she does is t-shirts, mugs, tea towels. She's got something like 15 CDs, and having a range of stuff because she's so big and folk have been following her. She just did her 20-year anniversary tour a year ago. Most folk have all of her CDs. So new folk come up and they buy the new tea towel and the new mug, and if it's at Christmas, the Christmas paper, the Christmas cards, the Christmas stockings, and she's still selling 20 quid worth of merch to somebody who is her whole back catalogue. So I would say having as you grow in the amount of gigs that you're doing and the audience that you're building, always give them something new that they can buy, even if it is only £1.50, because the 50 folk buying a £1.50 bag is, you know, your petrol.
And I mean, these are things that are happening in the live sphere. Do you use any services to sell merch online, or are there any sort of things which you would recommend for that?
Well, the majority of musicians that I work with just have their own online shops attached to their websites. The majority of them are using Bandcamp. Kate, she also owns her own record company, so it's tied in. If she is actually the definition kind of cottage industry. Her dad is the manager, her husband plays in the band, her mum does the accounts, her sister does merchandising, her brother is the sound engineer.
So with websites, presumably you can get an order in and you have to make the t-shirt and pack it yourself and send it off. Yeah. But are there services that will do that for you? So people go onto your site, but they'll order the t-shirt and everything will be taken care of by another company.
I have to say, all the folk that I work with, they do it themselves. So they do. So yeah.
There are various companies that do that as well, though.
And do you still pack the t-shirts yourself?
I do. I'm cheap. That's why I do that. Yeah, man, totally, absolutely.
Now, are there any mistakes that you can make with merch? I mean, what would you say the most common errors that people make when it comes to going out on tour or getting merch produced?
Not getting the right size t-shirts. Let's just say that Kate's audience tend to be slightly on the more larger side. So having 40 small ladies fit t-shirts is a disaster in tour, and counting them every night becomes the bane of your life because you never sell any. So look at your audience and have a rough guess at, you know, the different sizes. Don't just buy a blanket, 10 small, 10, you know, like, guess the dress sizes. And the other thing is pricing that folk, I would say, at pricing your market. The thing that the tour that I work on is fantastic at is the fact that there is something at £1.50 and the fact that there's something at 20 quid, which means you get the whole spectrum of how folk who have money in their purse and want to spend it. Kate's gig tickets are also expensive at 25 quid a pop. So folk are already spending a lot on a night out. So that's something else to consider when you're looking at what you're selling, is how much folk are already spending to come to your live show.
I'd also say just on a slightly, I don't know, think about what it is that you're actually selling and who you're selling it to and the environment it's in. I mean, one that we had, it wasn't a disaster, it actually worked really well in the end because people thought it was really funny, was we were selling red t-shirts with the words "keep warm," which is like a kind of prominent lyric from one of the songs, on the front of it in New York during the heat wave, one of the biggest heat waves that they'd had in like 10 years. People thought it was absolutely hilarious that there was a t-shirt with "keep warm" written on it when everybody wanted to do anything but. We did have another thing as well, which I won't go into super details, but when we were looking to do artwork for something, I think it was a screen printed poster, and someone had pointed out that it looked very much like another iconic image that may get us into some trouble, you know, for copyright purposes. And actually it would be quite offensive as well. We didn't find it offensive. So we did do that. We just scrapped that design, moved on to the next one, because to be honest, the whole purpose of doing, we weren't looking to try to make a big statement with it. We were just like, oh yeah, it is a bit like that. So we just moved on. So if you're going to do merchandise and you know who's going to buy it, I mean, especially if you're starting out and you're like a fledgling band, like, show it to your mates. Like, I think there's a big problem with bands a lot of time, certainly with the bands I work with, where it feels like everything in the band's a big secret. So nobody gets to see it until it's out. But like, if you're designing t-shirts or you're designing sleeves or anything like that, let your friends see it and just be like, is that cool? Does that look good? Would you wear that? You know, like, do you want one of these? And if the answer is generally yes, then the odds are you'll be able to sell more of them as your fan base expands.
Actually, something that Kate has just done was she's had the same designs for quite a few years now, and on her Facebook page we put up 3 photos of potential designs of the canvas bags, and then got her audience to kind of vote, what one of these designs would you most likely do. That was really successful in a couple of ways, because rather than, as I've explained, you know, the family unit kind of deciding on what they like. In fact, that's normally where the arguments come, because there's different ideas. But actually, they got their audience to do it. So that means all these folk have seen the ideas and are waiting for the new merchandise to come out. But also, it meant that folk were sharing her page and her likes and links to the shop and everything. So through that type of audience engagement, she built her audience again, which, you know, the next time she puts a CD or whatever, that was like, well, Kate's likes go up, I think something like 100 people a week at least, kinda. So, you know, yeah.
The other thing I was going to say is don't get too much done. I've still got t-shirts from a band that I worked with in like 2004, and every time I go through this case with like old clothes in it and stuff, these t-shirts kind of come out to haunt me. And yeah, it's you could end up with your bed propped up with old merch, so try and gauge it. You can always get more done.
And also, like have good fun with it. Do you know what I mean? Don't just treat it as being like, a lot of the stuff we're talking about is quite boring, because it is boring. So like, it doesn't have to be. Do you know what I mean? You're creative people. Think of like good things and fun things to do with it. I mean, one of the bands that my co-manager and I are working with sort of in development just now did a show at the QMU as a support slot, and they didn't have any t-shirts. So we went and we bought loads of blank t-shirts of different colours, or different sizes, and you know, that we would get to fit. Just bought spray paint and just fucking spray painted like a stencil onto the front of the t-shirt. They looked absolutely terrible. I mean, it looked absolutely awful. We sold them all. It's ridiculous, you know, like, we'll never ever do that again. I don't recommend any of you do it, but it's a good laugh. Do you know what I mean? We made money out of doing it. So do things that are fun, and like, people will get off on that, even if they're not. Nobody who bought any of those t-shirts in their right mind are going to wear them. They're going to keep them and say, I bought one of those t-shirts that band spray painted by hand, and they look awful. And it's just good fun. I mean, people are in the entertainment business. I mean, entertain people. Generally, if you find something fun, that energy will transfer over into your audience, you know?
People working in music make their living from all sorts of different things, as you've probably just gathered listening to Michael, myself, and Jen and Jamie. So it's worth keeping in mind, if you are a musician yourself, you can teach people, you can do classes. You're saying people are giving classes on tour.
Yeah, quite a lot of the acts that I work with. In fact, I'm in the middle of organising a tour for 2 traditional musicians who have wrote commissions, and part of that will be that while they're on the road, is they will go and do kind of community workshops and composer talks and things like that, and that is an added bit onto their fee, and again, it builds their audience. So it does. It's engaging with people.
Yeah, my flatmate's just back from a tour with an American band who do that, and instead of doing it more publicly like this, it's literally private lessons. So it's like, if you're like really into this band and you want to know how they get that guitar sound, or you want to know, do you know what I mean, how they pull off this thing, then they do, like, just after sound check, By the way, when you're touring, there's loads of time that's really boring. Loads of time sitting about doing nothing. But these guys are like that. Well, do you know what? We've got everything set up. If we can get another room, then I can probably make X amount of money at doing that. And they're comfortable doing that. If you're not comfortable doing it, it's not going to work, because you won't get off on it near the people who you're working with, but they do.
And another thing to mention as well, more so in I believe, at least in my experience in Scandinavia, but in a lot of places I've seen bands being invited to DJ after playing their live set, and then there's another chunk of money for that, so that, often doesn't, and Keith's going to kill me for saying this, but is often doesn't require any particular skills. They're just people they're getting invited because they're in the band and they're famous for being musicians. But if you then have an opportunity to play a few of your favorite tunes and get another 100 or 150 quid for it, that's worth keeping in mind.
There's a couple of examples of guys who are actually good DJs that are in indie bands. Like that guy Matt Tong from Block Party is a good DJ. But exactly as you said, like my boys have done loads of DJ sets. It's just indie disco, like fader up, fader down, fader up, fader down.